Hello, this is
Hello.
Catherine Jelinek with the Skinny Platform, and I'm excited today to welcome Rene Boer to speak with us. Thank you, Rene.
Yeah, well, you're welcome, Catherine, and I'm excited to share my nugget for Dan Hyrick's book.
Wonderful. And what is your nugget?
So the nugget is rules of engagement, and this gets to accountability. And it's interesting that that seems to be something that makes every boss crazy. Is why don't people accept accountability? And what do I need to do to improve accountability? And so the nugget here is to really get the team that's working with that boss to establish some rules that they're willing to hold themselves accountable for. So there's been a lot of work done on this by other authors, but the highest level, I think, of accountability is when teammates are willing to hold each other accountable for some simple rules. And that takes the heat off of the boss. The other thing about accountability is it's about yourself and a willingness to hold yourself accountable. But here's how this works in a team environment. You get your team together and say, we're going to be working together on a lot of different things over the next year or into the future. Could we agree on some simple rules that we could all live by so that we can be more effective as a team? And when you pose it that way, what are some of the things that people would say? And you kind of posit this as behaviors. So they may say things like, well, uh, why don't we show up to all of our meetings on time? What a concept. Isn't it annoying when people show up late to meetings? Of course, this has never happened to you, Catherine. How about this? Uh, we should honor our commitments. When we make commitments, we're going to honor them. That seems to make sense. Uh, how about no excuses? And so when you get a group of people together and they're willing to have this conversation, and the boss is the person that's leading the conversation and basically capturing a handful, you don't need the 20 commandments. It's just a handful. Can we just agree 4 or 5 things that we're going to be willing to hold ourselves and each other accountable for? It's magic. And then, of course, the next question that you ask is, so as a team, how are we going to handle a situation where one of us, including me as the boss, might violate one of these rules? What do we do? And you get some agreement around that. I think you could have a lot of fun with this and get a lot more things done. So, rules of engagement.
That's
That's what
wonderful.
I
Can you give us an example of a team that you've worked with and how they've used this?
Sure. Uh, well, it's about a couple of those things that I mentioned.
Yep.
Uh, so often in a meeting, what annoys other people in the meeting is the person who might have an issue is someone who's just making a lot of excuses. It's like, hey, it's just an issue. We just need to solve this. You don't need to make excuses, right? Or being on time. So when a team says and commits to each other that they will be on time for each meetings, that's the beginning of discipline. And if we're not even disciplined enough to be on time, it's pretty hard to have anything else happen. And so uh, the teams that have done this, I think, are having a heck of a lot more fun, and it's a heck of a lot more fun for the boss because he or she does not need to be the source of all accountability.
Right.
Yeah.
What's an example of the accountability measure if one of these isn't followed?
What's the measure if it's not followed?
Yes, like what's the, you know, walking the talk, and if the boss even shows up late to that meeting, what has happened in your teams as a result of not following one of the rules of engagement?
Yeah. So it's then people calling it out. So this holds the boss to a high standard too. If you're going to do this exercise, you better agree to play by the same rules. And a lot of times, there are bosses that feel like the rules don't apply to them. So I think for a boss to do this, he or she's got to be really humble and has got to be willing to hold themselves accountable and really set the example and model the behavior for the entire team.
Mhm.
And you can have some fun with this because when the boss comes in and sort of heads this off at the pass and said, hey, I apologize for being late with no excuse. and just say, hey, there's no excuse. I was late. We don't want to hear about traffic jams or, climate change or the whatever. And so uh, when people do that, it's like, okay, acknowledged. Let's move on. No blaming, no shaming.
I have a lot of respect for this, and I've seen it in action in a specific setting through forums. And I'm not sure if you've been a part of a forum before, Renee, but having some of these, I've heard them called protocols, I've heard them
Mm-hmm.
called agreements,
Yep.
standards, but these guiding principles of how you commit to being together in
Yeah.
this way.
Yeah.
And some forums I've been a part of have even charged members for rolling in late. And
Yeah, I've heard of that too. They put $5 in the pot and we'll use that for whatever. Uh, whatever it takes. I mean, you can have some fun with this, and I've heard that as well.
yes,
But whatever works for the team, whatever works for the team. The other thing that's interesting about this, and you've probably experienced the same thing. Whenever you add somebody new to your team, you have to recognize that you now have a new team. It's not the same team with a new member, it's a new team. And when you have these rules already established, they're non negotiable. Isn't it a lot easier to onboard somebody onto the team? So they don't have to waste a lot of time, uh, you know, posturing and doing all this politicking and all these crazy things. It's like, okay, we're just regular group of people here, just trying to get better.
it feels like these rules of engagement also reinforce the intentional culture of the
Yeah,
group.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I loved what you said in what you wrote here about it, that, getting your team to work together and become good teammates instead of being a leadership team. It's the difference between a leadership team or having a team of leaders. And it's like a group of people or something that's really working together.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's beautiful to differentiate that.
yeah. And I think it's an ability to really collaborate and work together. It's amazing in meetings. So often there'll be an issue, and there's a few people in the meeting right away that will just say, "Well, this doesn't feel like my problem, so
Mm.
I'm just going to go ahead and check out." So the poor marketing person is on the hot seat, and everybody else is taking that moment to check their smartwatch or their smartphone, check for messages. It's like, wait a minute. This is an issue that one of the members of the team has. Shouldn't we all be leaning in on this?
So when you're working with clients, do you ever initiate an engagement with a team that's already following some rules of engagement? Or have you most often walked into a team and never seen that and know they need it?
Well, there might be some, but for the most part, no. And this is part of much bigger subject now. It's amazing how many times I've worked with clients where the word communication ends up on the issues list.
Hmm.
Someone's, we have a real problem with communication. Great. Could you give me a specific example? Well, communication in general. What does that mean? And when you start breaking that down, it's a huge area of improvement, and it starts with, uh, hey, could we just agree on how we're going to treat each other and behave? Communication is nothing more than just an ability to connect with people. So we're having a dialogue as opposed to I'm just blabbing away. So, uh, which could be another one of the rules of engagement would be, hey, we're going to be better listeners. We're going to be better listeners. Couldn't we all sign up for that one? I know I could.
I am all about that.
What's that?
Doing this work, that is becoming my MO of what the world needs, to just actually listen to each other. It
Yeah,
changes everything when
yeah.
you're
You know,
present, noticing.
there was a program on last night I was watching. It was on the news. They were talking about how easy it is for people to use social media or non-verbal, more like text messages and emails to state their points of view. And it's easy to be nasty and all sorts of things when you don't have to look somebody right in the eye. So they got a bunch of people together and just to have a dialogue. Let's tee up some issues and just talk through it. And it turned out that people were a lot more civil and they were actually listening and they were saying, you know what, Catherine, I can see your point of view. Now I don't may not agree with it, but I appreciate what you said. You know, and I think that's becoming, unfortunately, a bit of a real loss to society, and you can kind of see it in what's happening today. People have already made up their minds on a lot of things. They've shut down. They're not listening. They're, I think, sometimes intellectually lazy. They don't want to do the work, and I think we maybe that's what we need as a country. How about some simple rules of engagement?
I think that is very well put.
And it can only be a handful. We don't need the Ten Commandments. Let's boil it down to just a handful.
Well, even just 3 would be great.
What was that?
Even just a few. Yes, like 3
Yeah, yeah,
would be great. And one of them being listening to each other, how much that would change. And I think the example that you're making with that is that when we connect as humans and actually listen to one another, it actually changes the output of the result of the conversation.
sure.
It's different. And to bring it back to what you've shared here with the rules of engagement, things like this, standards like this, putting them in place allow you to be more present and connected in a conversation with your team.
Mm,
And then if you have that, 8 people in a room or 6 or 4 even, and that many people present and listening because of these rules of engagement, it definitely changes the output of the conversation.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Purpose of today's meeting is we want to come up with the best solution
Yes.
on one item. We have one topic today. We got to get to the bottom of. We want to come up with the best solution. Let's dig in.
Yep. Yep.
So, how can we all be better listeners? Today's topic.
And that we need structure. We need
Yeah, I'm open to suggestions and I will write them down.
That's right. Very cool.
It's all pretty simple, but there's nothing about any of this that's easy because after all, we're dealing with people. I always like to kid my clients and say, wouldn't this be a great business if we could just get rid of customers and employees? It'd be wonderful.
Well, with the wild world of AI that we're coming closer and closer to, the removal of people is getting more and more real.
Well, yeah, I think that's largely a myth.
Is it?
I mean, after all, it was people
Mm-hmm.
created the idea in the first place, right? Just
Good
like with
point.
a lot of ideas. So use it for good or use it for not so good. I think there's an opportunity to use that for good.
I agree with you. And
Yeah.
to leave us with more space to do things like this and look each other in the eye and show up on time.
Yeah. Show up on time. Speak up, be kind, no assumptions, which is another communication issue. We all make assumptions. And then when you test the assumption, you realize that, oops. So I always like to start with, Catherine, I could be wrong, and I usually am, but I just got to say this, and I just got to ask you.
That's
And
good.
as you get into the conversation, you realize, boy, am I glad I said I could be wrong because I was wrong.
But that's so much better than continuing to move through a conversation or a team dynamic with an elephant in the room and assumptions that, like you said, most of the time are actually at least partially incorrect.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I think the more you engage with people, the more you realize that we have so much more in common than not in common. It doesn't matter where you go. I don't know if you've traveled internationally, but I have, and it's like wherever you go, it's like, gosh, these are like my neighbors. These people could be my neighbors. So I'm the eternal optimist on this one.
Thank you for being that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that lens. I do. And I appreciate that something as simple as like rules of engagement can help bring more humanity to a team, even if you're doing it digitally, remotely, over Zoom. Things like this are still really important to bring that back through. the humanity side of it.
All right. So this was fun. Do you have anything else?
I don't. Thank you so much, Rene. And we'll sign off here and looking forward to seeing your pages in the book.
All right. Take care.
This episode of the Podcast of Nuggets is presented by The Skinny Platform and is released in support of Freedom Reads, a national nonprofit opening handcrafted, curated 500-book libraries in prison cell blocks across America. Freedom libraries are more than just books. They are lifelines. They bring connection, hope, and dignity to prisons. Learn more at freedomreads.org. Freedom begins with a book.